In 20 minutes, I have to decide if I am going to take a mushroom journey tomorrow, a substantial mushroom journey tomorrow. I have to let the people who are going to be arranging this know whether or not I'm going through with it. But I think I've made the decision already. Yeah, I think I know the answer. Just based on everything that's happened over the last week, because the last week has been super intense. There's been a lot that's happened out in the world and internally, emotionally, psychologically. It all started with this underground invitation-only Bay Area festival that a friend suggested I perform at, and she reached out to the organizers to have me perform there, but it was too soon. It was 4 days before the festival. They're like, we don't have any room, but he's welcome to come as a regular civilian. And I was resistant to this because I've always performed at festivals. Whenever I've gone to a festival, I've always performed. And part of that is I love performing, particularly in these environments where I can be very free and talk about pretty out there stuff, different medicines, things that mainstream audiences may not get, but also because I am deeply introverted, and being on stage, being the center of attention, gives me a sense of a social identity and a comfort, because now people know who I am. It's easier to meet people. People will come up to me. So the thought of going to this festival without that was not appealing. But my friend was insistent that this was like a really special festival, that she thought I would enjoy it, that she thought I should go. And a couple of other friends, one of whom wasn't even going, also were like, yeah, you should go to this. So I decided to go. And predictably, it was somewhat challenging. I enjoyed connecting with my friends who I'd gone with, but I wasn't really connecting with other attendees there. I kind of felt like, well, I could have just hung out with them, in the Bay Area. I didn't need to spend time and money going to this festival. So the last day of the festival, everyone takes I hate that I have to use these euphemisms on these platforms, but I guess I do, a medicine, a sort of consciousness or heart expanding medicine. They bring their own medicine, whatever medicine you want to take, but everyone takes it together. So the question was, what medicine should I take? Because there were many medicines on offer via my friends. And the criteria was I wanted something that was going to help me feel connected to people there, but I wanted to feel good the next day, because the day after this festival, I was going to Yosemite to do solo wilderness backpacking in the deep sort of backcountry, which, requires a lot of thought and planning, and you don't want to go in feeling fried. So after much consultation with GPT and some second opinions from Gemini and a third opinion or two from Claude, I settled on a medicine that is similar to the main heart-opening medicine molecule that most people are familiar with. That particular famous heart-opening molecule does not really work for me. Probably because I was on high-dose SSRIs from 1992 to 2007 for OCD. I've been off of them since 2007, but high-dose SSRIs, or SSRIs in general, can actually dampen the effect of this molecule and related molecules. And even though I've been off for 19 years, that molecule still doesn't work for me, the popular molecule. But this was an alternate version of that popular molecule, more experimental, that GPT thought might actually be more effective, and significantly was going to have less risk of a hangover. So I decided to take a fairly low dose. I really wanted to be conservative. I wanted to be in good shape for my Yosemite trip. That was the priority. And I didn't feel anything for a while, which was what I expected. This particular, what euphemistic term should we use? Let's call it, this particular molecule, the one I took, not the more famous one, is known to take a while to take effect. And then I gradually, about 90 minutes in, I started feeling this very intense sensation in my heart. There was it's hard to describe. I'm very aware I feel emotions in my heart, typically. Joy and painful emotions. And the painful emotions I feel, or I think the painful emotions all humans feel, I think there's really only two fundamental painful emotions, which are fear, anxiety, all that stuff, put it under fear, and loss, grief. But this sensation in my heart, this very intense sensation, it wasn't either of those. It wasn't fear, it wasn't loss, but it was quite unpleasant. There was no information there. There was no narrative attached to this sensation. It was just there, and it was really, really intense and kept getting more and more intense, more and more intense. This just deep throb in my heart that I wanted to go away. And of course, I told it, hey, I'm glad you're here. I did all my IFS protocol, sent it love, asked it what it needed from me, but I wasn't able to connect to it. I wasn't able to get any information from it. It was just there. And I tried to dance it out, and that didn't work. And I tried to walk it out, and that didn't work. And I tried to talk with people, and that didn't work. So finally, I'm like, all right, fuck it. I found a creek. Running water is not only a consolation for me, it's just, I meditating by running water. Running water is, I'd say it's like a performance-enhancing drug for meditation for me. I just sit by the water and kind of attune my own energy to the energy of the water. God, I've spent too much time in the Bay Area. I'm talking like this, but that is what I do. And so I sat by this creek, and I just didn't want to be with the sensation in my chest. But it's there. So I just kept turning my attention to this sensation again and again. And I'd actually set an alarm on my phone. I'd say 10 minutes. I'm going to meditate, sit with the sensation for 10 minutes. The alarm went off, another 10 minutes. And I did this probably for 3 or 4 rounds, 30 or 40 minutes of just being with this sensation as best as I could, but it was just so fucking painful and so mysterious. What is this sensation? What does it want from me? Yeah, that's what I wanted to do with the sensation. I don't know if you saw a runner just went by. I wanted to run from it, but I can't run from it. It's in my body. And it's starting to get dark. It's like 2.5, 3 hours in since I took this molecule. And then suddenly I have this rapidly unfolding succession of thoughts. First, I think of my niece, Eleanor, my 10-year-old niece, Eleanor, who is my favorite person in the world. And if you knew her, she'd be your favorite person in the world too. She's just the most ineffably magical creature I've ever met. Though I've said that about my other nephews and nieces when they've been that age too. But yeah, we have this wonderful relationship, just this deep love and appreciation and enjoyment of each other's company. You know, it's not like uncle, niece, it's like we're just two humans, two beings who love connecting and relating. And so I was thinking about her, and I was thinking how much I love her and how much she loves me. Whenever I come visit the house, she's always like, Uncle Addie, will you sit next to me at dinner? And I realized Eleanor, she doesn't love me because I'm her uncle. She's 10. They don't give a fuck about familial obligation. She loves me because of the way I am with her, because of how I show up to that relationship. And then I thought of my mom. She has less of a choice but to love me, I think mothers generally. But there too, I realized, no, a lot of the love she has for me is because of how I show up to that relationship. And in quick succession, I held in my mind all of my immediate family members. And then I started thinking about my friends and just very quickly thinking of the relationship. And in every case, I immediately concluded that each of these people who love me, they love me because of how I show up to the relationship, because of how the choices I make with them, because of what I bring to them, to the relationship. And then, almost like a mathematical proof, I had the thought, I am loved deservedly. And I've never had that thought before. I've never once had that thought before. If you'd asked me 4 hours before that, I'd say, oh yeah, there's a lot of people who love me, but I don't really deserve it. I'm a piece of shit. Yeah, why do they love me? I don't know, but I don't really deserve it. I'm not deserving of their love. I've deeply felt, unquestioningly felt, that I do not deserve all of the love that I receive, and I do receive a lot of love. But now, it was suddenly, again, it was like a mathematical proof. It was purely logical. That's the interesting thing. This was not an emotional experience. This was just a reasoning thought process that unfolded over the course of maybe 3 minutes and resulted in that conclusion. I am loved deservedly. And then I realized that sensation in my heart had shifted. There wasn't joy there. There was peace there. It was very quiet. My whole being felt very quiet. And I just sat by the creek for I don't know, another 15 minutes or so. And then I re-entered the party. And then immediately I was like, no, I need to be quiet. And so I sat by the creek, and there were really very few thoughts at that point. Just gratitude that, wow, how much love I have in my life, and appreciation for myself that I do deserve this love. Later on, when I was telling people about this experience at this festival, a number of people said, yes, we're all worthy of love. But I corrected them. I was like, no, that actually was not my experience at all. In fact, I don't believe we're all worthy of love. I mean, yes, we're all humans, and at some level, maybe, debatably, but I don't think we're automatically entitled to or worthy of love. No, this experience was almost the opposite. It was almost transactional in a way. It was like, no, I have earned the love I've gotten. These people love me because what I give them is not quite the right way to phrase it. Yeah, how I show up. The choices I make in this relationship, that is why I'm loved. Not because I'm inherently worthy, but because I'm specifically worthy. That was the healing thought there. But yeah, it just was like, this is a great Michael Pollan quote, whom I've hiked on this very trail with, by the way. But, psychedelics, am I allowed to say that word? God, I hate the censorship. These medicines offer a graduate level education in the obvious. And in hindsight, it seems pretty obvious that all these people who love me, it's not just random. It's not just a sense of obligation, but this was an utterly novel thought and experience for me. And so then I eventually went back into the festival and immediately saw my very close friend, Jahan, and had a pretty profound conversation. Which, illuminated some things about my last relationship with my ex-partner, Anna, who I've shared about. But one thing Jahan said that really stayed with me, the first thing he said when I told him about this experience, in fact, is he said, life will be easier from now on. But it hasn't been. So the next day, well, I'll finish this off. So I did eventually go back in and enter the fray of the festival and had some pretty meaningful connections with a couple of women and danced for hours and just felt just totally non-needy. Like I had no agenda. I wasn't looking for anything from anyone, which I suppose makes sense. If one has for the first time truly apprehended that they not only are loved by many, because that wasn't a novel thought, but that they deserve that love, then that sort of reflexive grasping for validation, for love, that has defined so much of my personal life and my professional life as a comedian and performer, that is going to be diffused. And so it was. And of course, the paradox is when you're desperately looking for love and validation, it's hard to find. When you don't give a fuck, it's kind of everywhere. And that was my experience, suffice to say, for the rest of the night, is just feeling, a lot of connection with a lot of people effortlessly and totally unattached to outcomes in a way that is unusual for me. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, oh, I feel pretty good. Phew. But as the day wore on, I started feeling a little bit more emotionally ragged, lonely. And then the next day, I woke my one day in the Bay Area before I went to Yosemite and felt real fear, almost panic. I woke with almost panic. And I've shared before about these panic attacks I was getting last summer, which eventually went away. And of course, the way they went away is I just kept tuning into the panic and not running from it. And it kind of dissipated eventually. But this was so intense. I just felt unsafe is the word I'd use. I felt profoundly everything felt scary, shaky, uncertain. Yeah. And so, of course, when I have, with OCD, fear is both an effect of OCD. The more you do OCD, the more afraid you get, but it's also a cause. The more afraid you are, the more likely you are to do OCD, because OCD is designed to neutralize fear. But of course, it just makes more fear. So predictably, I started obsessing, should I go to Yosemite? I'm exhausted. I'm terrified. Do I want to go alone into the fucking deep wilderness where I'm probably not going to see any humans? And I obsessed about this decision until finally it was too late to go that day. But it was like, am I going to go the next day? Well, the next day I woke up and I felt somewhat better, significantly better. Not quite baseline. There was still more fear than I usually experience, but I was like, just go into the wilderness. The wilderness never steers you wrong, because the wilderness never steers me wrong. And I did go to Yosemite. But I was going in with this burden of fear, and that led to more OCD, to the point that I got to the permit office to pick up my Yosemite wilderness permit. And I spent an hour talking to the people there about whether or not I should change my permit for a different route, to the point that they're like, hey, we're actually closing now. You have to decide. And so I did decide which route to go on, because I had to. And then it was too late for me to go into the wilderness that night. So I slept at the backpackers campground that night. And then the next morning I woke up and I was like, maybe I should change it again. And I actually went back to the permit office to change my permit again after spending an hour talking to ChatGPT. Unfortunately, there is now cell service in the Yosemite Valley. There wasn't even a year ago. I went back to the permit office to change my permit. But there was a line, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to stick with this itinerary, and I'm glad I did. The experience of Yosemite, maybe I'll do another video about it, was not without challenges, but man, I've never gone backpacking in May. The rivers, talking about running water, it was just like these torrential cataracts it was waterfalls everywhere. And I was in deep backcountry, the Merced River Basin, seeing almost no one but the river. And river isn't even the right term. It was so forceful. Maybe I'll splice in some video footage here. It wasn't like this profound healing experience, but it did open up this gratitude, and I felt stable there. I found my footing there. Literally climbing these mountains, and metaphorically. And I got back to the Bay Area late last night, like 1 a.m. So tired, feeling triumphant, buoyant, like I'd gone on this wilderness trip feeling good, and I woke this morning and the panic was there. It feels like the residue of this super intense heart sensation. It feels like somehow related to this molecule that I ingested now 1 week ago. What if this sensation never goes away? That was my thought. Well, there's only one thing to do, and so I just kind of tuned into it, stayed with it, and it started to settle. And now, the decision. I shared before about this mushroom journey I went on now, 3 weeks ago? And I have another one scheduled for tomorrow, where I'm going to be eating more mushrooms than I did last time. But I don't think I am. Because, well, first of all, it's been a lot, this festival, then Yosemite. But second of all, so let me be clear, this molecule experience I had a week ago, it wasn't like, in some ways, a very intense experience. There weren't any visuals or anything like that. There was just this super intense heart sensation, this sort of mathematical proof of I am loved deservedly, and then the after effects that were challenging. But it feels like it might still be unfolding, because I was just journaling about this question, should I do this mushroom journey tomorrow? And I had this moment where I realized I was trying to figure it out. I was like, this expression, that was probably my expression. I wasn't looking at myself in my camera, but it was like I was thinking harder to figure it out. And then I was like, oh, just let that go. You're not going to figure this out in your head. And of course, I've known that for years, decades. But yet I still routinely try to figure things out harder in my head. And that's what the OCD is. I try to figure it out harder, and I can't get certainty, so I try even harder. But I was able to just let it go. And that, I think, contained my answer. I'm not saying that this experience, this realization that I am loved deservedly, is necessarily leading to less OCD, but it's plausible to me that it will. Because I do think this deep feeling of shame that I've often shared about here is the ultimate root of the OCD. Maybe not ultimate. You know, you can always go further down the rabbit hole psychologically and historically and in memories. But certainly a deep part of it is this sense of shame. And when I was talking to my friend Jahan, he said, the feeling that I'm bad, which is a feeling I had as a little kid, the corollary of that is I don't deserve love. And that rang true for me. So it seems plausible that if indeed there has been a shift and that I do, for the first time in my life, feel I actually deserve the love I have in my life, that could lead to a significant shift in the OCD, and perhaps that is already happening. Note that I use conditional language, could, perhaps, because I'm very leery of counting, with these medicine experiences, I've had many experiences where I'm like, oh, this is going to be a life-changing shift. And then 3 days later, I'm back to where I was, or maybe not quite, but close to it. So we'll see. But ultimately, I feel like the experience I had a week ago I can't say for sure, but it feels like it may still be unfolding. It may still be running its course. And so I want to let it run its course. And what that means feels pretty clear to me. With this fear, with this panic, just sitting with it. Sitting with all of this stuff. And by the way, if you'd asked me 8 days ago, I would have told you the exact same thing. I know that's the work. All of my OCD videos are about sitting with intense emotion. But it feels like, I don't know if I have a more capability to do that now or more incentive to do it now, because when the emotion is more intense, paradoxically, I'd say, that can make it easier to sit with it because it's obvious that you can't escape it. So I'm not going to be journeying with mushrooms tomorrow. Yeah. I'm going to see how this unfolds.